Hello, and welcome to Eat to Treat. Um, we are a nonprofit that aims to end health disparities. I'm Dr. Amaris Williams. I have a PhD in nutrition, and I'm an avid foodie and a cook. And as part of Eat to Treat, I do live cook-along cooking demonstrations um, of diabetes and hypertension friendly recipes. And the recipes are on the first Saturday of every month and the third Saturday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I post the ingredients ahead of time, usually on the Wednesday before the demo, so that you can join me in the kitchen and we can cook together and I can answer your questions and all that sort of stuff. So today we're making a chili. This can be a vegetarian chili if you don't add the turkey to it, or you can add ground turkey to it and make it a meat chili. So let's get started. Okay. Um, if you are adding meat, I've got this 93% lean ground turkey. You can add that now, or you can add it after your vegetables have been cooking for a while. I'm going to add mine after my vegetables have been cooking for a while because I want my vegetables to be softer, and I want them to cook longer. So I'm going to start with celery because that's what I want to be the softest. I don't like crunching through celery. So I'm just going to cut the top off and then cut the tail off. And then I'll just slice it thinly. This one is larger than this one, and I'm going to cut it in half lengthwise. I'll probably cut both of them in half lengthwise because, like I said, I don't like celery that much. I like the flavor that it gives soups and stocks and stuff, but I don't want to crunch on it. It's weird. Just roll with it. All right, so once you have split your celery, you can just slice it and once you slice your celery, you can go ahead and add it to the pot. If you want your celery crunchy, then add it last. Actually, I don't think I'm going to use these ends. So I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil, about a tablespoon, to my pan. And maybe a little bit more than that. Okay. And now I'll turn it on a 5 out of 10. And now I'm going to add the celery to the pan. So the next thing I want to cut up is the onion. And I didn't buy tearless onions this time, so I might start crying. This onion has been peeled, so if your onion is not peeled, go ahead and peel it now. And you saw me cut the stem end off of the onion, but the root end is still intact. The root end holds the onion together while you cut it. So I'm going to cut it in half through the root so that I have a flat surface and my onion is not going to try and run away on me. And then I'm just going to cut it parallel to the cut I just made, so that I have strips of onion that are still held together by the root, so it's not going anywhere. And then I'm going to cut it perpendicular to those cuts. And then that just gives me some nice dice, some nice pieces of onion. Excuse me. That I can throw in my pan. Okay. And actually, I think I'm going to turn this down to a 4. 4 out of 10. You can leave it higher if you want. It's not bad for a chili for your vegetables to brown a little bit, because that's more flavor. But you can also just cook your vegetables without browning them. That's called sweating your vegetables. It's a culinary term for you. And then do the other half of the onion the same way you did the first half of the onion. Try not to cry. Okay. Okay, next up is the bell pepper. And don't forget to stir your vegetables on occasion. Okay, so the bell pepper is a box. It's hollow on the inside. What we want is what would be the cardboard part if it were actually a box. So we want the flesh that's on the outside. The seeds in the middle, we want to leave those intact. So how we do that is we just cut the sides off like this. So I've got my knife where it's in between the side, the edge of the bell pepper, and the stem part, and I'm just going to cut straight down. And as you can see, it's hollow inside, and we got the seeds stuck towards the middle. And so you just turn the bell pepper and do the same thing again. Cut the edge off, cut the other edge off, keep turning it and cutting the edges off until you're left with this center piece with the seeds, and you can go ahead and toss that. And then with the edges that we just cut off, I'm going to cut them into strips, and then cut those strips into little dice. The same way we did the celery, basically. Okay? And I'm using a yellow bell pepper. It doesn't really matter what color you want to use. You can use green, you can use red, orange. But I just wanted a little bit more color in my chili, so when I made this before, I used a red one, and it's pretty monochromatic. So I decided yellow this time. Okay. And again, don't forget to stir your vegetables. The last thing we're going to cut up is the jalapeno. But first, I'm going to put the turkey in there so I can get that cooking. I'm just going to dump it in there. Okay. Yeah, got it all in there? Okay, yeah. Alright, it's all in there. I'm going to turn it up to 5 now, because the turkey is cold and it's going to cool down my pot. And I'm not going to add any more oil, even though my oil is kind of dried up, because this is 7% fat. I mean, it's 93% lean, but that means it's 7% fat. And it's going to release that fat as it heats up. So we don't need to add any more fat. Alright, next I'm just going to cut the stems off of my jalapenos. Then I'm going to cut them in quarters lengthwise. So half lengthwise, roll it over, half again, which leaves me with 4/4. Now you can take the seeds out, but I find store-bought jalapenos are not spicy. So I leave the seeds in. But if you don't like chewing on seeds, then just peel the seeds out. But I don't think it's going to add much heat to your chili. If you do want heat in your chili, I would recommend a habanero or some cayenne pepper or something to that effect. You can use serranos. You can use what's the other one? Thai chili peppers. Those are the main ones that you can find at stores that are spicy. You can also find like adobo peppers and poblano peppers, but those aren't spicy. Alright, so again, I cut it in half lengthwise. I'm just going to roll it over and then cut it in half again. And now I've got 4 pieces. And I'm just going to slice those pieces. And you can tell that I'm doing pretty big chunks. That's because we're going to cook this for a while. And I mean, the flavor of the jalapeno, you don't have to worry about biting into a big piece of jalapeno and be like, oh, that's a jalapeno. You will not, the flavor of it will have melded with the rest of the soup, and you're not going to get like a smack in the face of jalapeno when you eat it. Alright. So, we got that cooking, and that's it for cutting up vegetables. The next thing is garlic, and I'm just using this garlic paste that is reasonably priced at Aldi. So, I'm just going to put about 1 tablespoon in there. And stir that around. And the turkey has released some of its fat, so nothing is sticking. If stuff is sticking to the bottom of your pan, you might have it up too high. The other thing that you can do is release all the stuff that's stuck to the bottom of the pan with some red wine. I think red would go well with the chili, but if you have white, all you have is white, you can use white wine as well. The next thing to do is add the tomatoes. So I've got these cans of crushed tomatoes. One thing to worry about with cans of tomatoes is that they generally add salt to them. So this has 140 milligrams per quarter cup, and 140 milligrams of sodium is not that much. That's about 10% of what you want to eat in a day. 10% of the maximum that you want to eat in a day. It's not like you're trying to get to 1500 milligrams. You're trying to stay under 1500 milligrams. So, my point is, a quarter cup of this is what they consider a serving. If you're going to eat a bowl of chili that's based on this tomato sauce, you're probably going to eat a little bit more than a quarter cup of this. But even if you eat a whole half cup of this tomato, crushed tomato, that's still 300 milligrams, which is not too terribly high. And this is the only thing that we've added to the pot so far that has a decent amount of sodium in it. So this is your main source of sodium in this dish so far, anyway. When we get to the beans, a lot of beans, they add salt to those as well, so gotta watch out for that. But I'll show you 2 examples, one where they've added salt and one where they have not. And that's why I didn't season the meat when I put it in there, because I know that there's salt in the tomatoes and in the beans, and there's really no need to add more salt to this pot. Okay, so this is the second can, 28-ounce can. You can also use 4 15-ounce cans if that's what you have. So, you know, just do your arithmetic. I got some splashed on my face. All right, now I'm going to stir this through, and then we're going to add the seasonings. So that's going to be, I think, 2 teaspoons of oregano, 1 tablespoon of chipotle powder, 1 tablespoon of smoked paprika, and some cumin. If you don't have smoked paprika or chipotle powder, you can just use regular chili powder. It's not going to have that smoky flavor, but it'll still taste good. Alright, so this is smoked paprika. So about a tablespoon of this. Put that in there. And you can reduce the amount of smoked paprika if you want, because sometimes it has like a bitter flavor, but you have to have a certain genetic background to be able to taste it. You have to be sensitive to bitter to determine that it's bitter. Alright, oregano, 2 teaspoons of oregano. 2 teaspoons is the same as 2/3 of a tablespoon, so that's what I'm going to put in there. And cumin is 1.5 teaspoons, which is the same as half of a tablespoon. So I will fill this up halfway. Okay. That in there. Let me just make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Oh, 2 bay leaves. So, these were fresh bay leaves that I got in the produce department, but they dried out. I had them sitting on my counter. But you, of course, can use fresh or dried bay leaves. And then we'll save the salt and pepper until the end, and we'll use that to adjust the seasonings. Use that to adjust the seasonings after we've simmered this for some time. I made this the vegetarian way earlier this week, and because there was no meat in it, I wanted to add a whole grain to it, or serve it with a whole grain. The option was to add a whole grain or serve it with a whole grain, because a grain plus a legume is a complete protein, and the beans in the chili are the legumes. So I wanted a complete protein without meat, and so I decided to add corn to it. That is not traditional among chilies. So if you're not from the United States, or you're not familiar with chili, for some other reason, corn is not a traditional ingredient in there. So if you're trying to make a traditional chili, don't add corn. Especially if you're adding meat, there's no real reason to do so unless you just like corn. So right now I'm cutting open a can of black beans. And I forgot to show it to you first. These black beans are not no salt added black beans, so they have 300 milligrams per half a cup. So about the same amount of salt as the tomatoes, volume for volume. And rinsing the beans and draining them will reduce the salt a little bit, but it's not going to completely eliminate the salt because salt dissolves through beans. So it's in the beans. And I don't have water here to rinse these, but you can rinse them. You don't have to. Go ahead and add your beans. And then another grocery store that's not Kroger, locally, Giant Eagle, they sell a low sodium version of beans, and that's what I like to buy. But I was at Kroger earlier, and that's what I got, was the salty black beans. But I'm balancing them out with the low sodium red kidney beans, and let's see how much salt is in those. So this is per half cup 130 milligrams, so less than half of the sodium that's in the black beans. So I'm just draining this. And you can rinse your beans if you have a sink nearby. Alright, kidney beans in. And that is the last major ingredient. I'm not going to put corn in this. If you are going to use corn, you can put it in there now. If you're using frozen corn, you can wait to the end and put it in there. Or you can put it in now. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to disintegrate or anything. Corn is pretty hardy. I'm not going to tell you how I know that. But it's kind of hard to break it down. Just leave it at that. So that's pretty much it that's going in there. So I'm gonna simmer this for, I'd say, at least 30 minutes. I simmered the vegetarian chili that I did for 20 minutes, and the celery was still crunchy. And like I said at the beginning, I don't like crunchy celery. So I'm going to simmer this for at least 30 minutes this time and see how mushy I can get my vegetables. And when I'm done cooking it, then I'll taste it, adjust the seasonings. So I'll tell you what I'm going to use to adjust the seasonings. Sometimes, especially if you're using a lot of smoked paprika, you get that bitter flavor in there, and you need to balance the bitter with sugar. I like to use brown sugar in my chili, only because brown sugar has a more robust flavor. Brown sugar is not any healthier for you than white sugar. Brown sugar is exactly the same as white sugar, it just has molasses added to it. So there's no added benefit. It's just sugar with sugar added to it. Another thing that you might find is that the chili needs acid, and so you can add lemon juice to it at the end. If you add lemon juice at the beginning or before you simmer it, then the lemon flavor will dissipate as you cook it. But if you add it at the end or right before you serve it, like serve it with a lemon wedge, then you'll get that lemon flavor. And then of course there's salt and pepper. Those are the main things. You can garnish it with cilantro or any kind of herb like parsley if you don't like cilantro. So go ahead and simmer your chili for 30 minutes or more, and then and that's it, and then enjoy it. So thank you for joining. And so today we made a diabetes friendly meal if you limit your portion sizes. We've got a high fiber a high micronutrient dish here. We've got lots of fruits and not lots of fruits and vegetables in there because tomatoes is technically a fruit, but it's mostly vegetables. Whether you make it vegetarian or not, you still have protein in there, so there's nothing to worry about in that respect. And it's a hypertension friendly meal. It's DASH diet uh, adherent, and yeah, that's it. So thank you, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. And that's the third Saturday of June at 3 p.m. Eastern, right here. Okay.